The Pacific Ocean, silent, endless, and deadly. But that silence shattered the moment China pulled the trigger. In a single instant, the world's balance of power was tested. Missiles streaked through the sky, targeting America's most powerful warship. What happened next changed everything. In the endless blue stretch of the Pacific Ocean, where the waves carry both calm and fear, something extraordinary was about to happen. For decades, the Pacific had been the silent witness to the growing rivalry between two of the world's greatest powers, the United States and China. Both nations had spoken the language of strength, pride, and deterrence, but on this day, that language would echo in the sound of missiles, engines, and alarms. It began as any ordinary day aboard the USS Gerald R. Ford, the most advanced aircraft carrier ever built. At sunrise, sailors prepared for another round of drills. Jets lined up on the deck like silent predators ready for takeoff. Somewhere in the Combat Information Center, radar screens glowed softly, tracing the vast sky above and the deep sea below. The crew had grown used to tension. After all, patrolling near the South China Sea meant living on the edge of conflict. But what they didn't know was that this patrol would become part of a story that the world would never forget. Thousands of miles away, within the command centers of the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force, orders were being executed with precision. China had long warned against the presence of U.S. carriers near its claimed territories. To Beijing, those massive steel giants were not just military threats, they were floating symbols of defiance. Today, the PLA was determined to send a message that would be heard across the globe. A missile wave, not a single strike, not a limited launch, but a full-scale test of China's growing reach and technological might. Back aboard the carrier, the first signs of trouble appeared on radar as faint blips, too fast to be aircraft, too coordinated to be random. Unknown contacts, the radar operator might have muttered, but the quiet soon turned to chaos. Multiple inbound signatures, closing in at hypersonic speed. The computer systems confirmed it. Missiles, dozens of them, cutting through the stratosphere like falling stars. The bridge fell silent for a moment. Every officer knew what this meant. A missile wave had been launched. The U.S. Navy had prepared for this scenario in countless simulations. The term, carrier killer, had haunted strategic briefings for years. The DF-21D and DF-26, two of China's most feared anti-ship ballistic missiles, were designed specifically to strike moving naval targets at extreme ranges. Traveling faster than Mach 10, these missiles could descend from space, adjusting their trajectory in mid-flight, making them incredibly difficult to intercept. In theory, even one could cripple a carrier. But this wasn't theory anymore. The calm professionalism of the U.S. Navy kicked in instantly. Aegis-equipped destroyers surrounding the carrier went into full defense mode. The order was clear: engage, intercept, protect the carrier at all costs. SM-3 and SM-6 interceptors shot into the sky like streaks of light. The sea, moments ago tranquil, turned into a theater of war. Within seconds, dozens of missiles were in flight, American interceptors climbing to meet the Chinese onslaught. Each second became an eternity as radar operators tracked hundreds of fast-moving objects, friend and foe. High above the Pacific, intercepts took place in blinding flashes. Missiles collided mid-air, exploding in bursts of fire that lit up the dawn. The sound of distant thunder rolled over the ocean. But not every missile was stopped. Some broke through, maneuvering unpredictably, their hypersonic bodies twisting to evade defenses. The Aegis computers recalculated again and again, sending new intercept vectors, trying desperately to close the gaps. Inside the carrier, the tension was unbearable. Officers reported impact times in seconds. Fighter jets scrambled from the deck, engines roaring, their mission unclear: to engage, to scout, or simply to survive. The air was alive with movement, as every sailor braced for what felt inevitable. The missile wave was relentless. Then it happened. One missile, perhaps the fastest of them all, broke through the defensive screen. Its trajectory pointed directly toward the heart of the carrier group. There was no time for hesitation. One of the destroyers, the USS John Finn, positioned itself between the carrier and the incoming threat. It was a move of pure instinct and courage. Within moments, the destroyer's close-in weapon system activated, unleashing a storm of rounds at the incoming missile. At such speeds, even milliseconds mattered. The ocean erupted in flame and shock as the missile disintegrated midair, the explosion rocking nearby ships. The USS John Finn took the brunt of the blast, but the carrier survived. When the smoke cleared, the Pacific was once again quiet, but not calm. The message had been delivered. The U.S. Navy had survived the missile wave, but the world had changed. Beijing didn't claim responsibility publicly, calling it a defensive exercise. Washington refrained from escalation, but inside the Pentagon, the event triggered an urgent re-evaluation of strategy. For the first time, the United States had faced what many analysts called the future of naval warfare, a battlefield where hypersonic weapons could overwhelm even the most advanced defenses. In the days that followed, satellite imagery and intercepted signals revealed more. The missile launch had been part of a large-scale Chinese exercise simulating attacks on moving carrier targets. Intelligence analysts noted that several of the missiles had deliberately missed by narrow margins, a clear indication that the intent was not destruction, but demonstration. China had shown the world what it could do, and it did so without crossing the final line into war. The incident sent ripples through global politics. In Tokyo and Seoul, governments convened emergency meetings. Australia's defense minister warned that the region has entered a new phase of deterrence. NATO issued cautious statements urging de-escalation. Even Russia, a close Chinese ally, watched the events with quiet curiosity. The balance of power in the Indo-Pacific had shifted. No longer was American naval supremacy unquestioned. The missile wave had proven that the age of unchallenged carriers was ending. Behind closed doors in Washington, the U.S. military initiated new programs. The focus turned to distributed lethality, spreading power across smaller, faster, and more elusive ships rather than relying on massive carriers alone. Research into laser defense systems, railguns, and next-generation interceptors accelerated. The race for survival in the new age of warfare had begun. But for the sailors who lived through that day, the experience was far more personal. Many recalled the silence before the alarms, the brief seconds when they realized the incoming signatures were real. The fear, the determination, the split-second decisions that saved thousands of lives, all burned into their memories. Some called it a miracle, others a warning. But every man and woman aboard that carrier group understood one thing: the world they served in had changed forever. As days turned into weeks, the footage leaked online, grainy clips from distant surveillance satellites showing flashes over the Pacific. News networks replayed the event endlessly. Commentators debated whether the United States had been caught off guard, whether China's message was one of dominance or desperation. In Beijing, the footage played on state television is proof of strength. In Washington, it played as a call to action. Yet, beyond the politics and the headlines, one truth lingered quietly beneath the surface: deterrence had worked. Both sides had flexed, tested, and retreated. The line between war and peace had grown thinner than ever, but it had not been crossed. The incident became a chapter in the ongoing story of strategic competition, one written not in ink, but in code, radar signals, and the flash of missiles in the sky. As night fell over the Pacific once again, the USS Gerald R. Ford continued its mission. Its massive deck glowed under dim red lights as jets returned from patrol. The ocean was calm again, but the air still carried an invisible weight, the knowledge that somewhere beyond the horizon, another nation watched, calculated, and prepared. War had not come, but its shadow loomed larger than ever. In the years that followed, historians would look back at this day as the moment when modern warfare changed. The event forced new treaties, new alliances, and a new understanding of how fragile peace could be. Military academies would study it as a case of near-perfect defense under impossible pressure. For the men and women who stood on deck that morning, it would remain a haunting memory, the day the sky fell and the sea caught fire. And so, in the heart of the Pacific, under a rising sun, the silent struggle continues. The carriers still sail, the missiles still wait, and two great nations still measure their will against the waves. Each patrol, each radar blip, each coded transmission is a reminder: the next confrontation may not end the same way. Because in a world where power is measured by distance, speed, and precision, peace is not guaranteed, it is earned, second by second, decision by decision. The missile wave may have failed, but its echo reshaped the world. The Pacific remains vast, the nations remain proud, and the future remains uncertain. As the camera fades from the horizon, the narrator's voice lowers to a whisper, a final reflection on the fragile balance that defines our age. The greatest weapons are not just missiles or machines, but choices that decide whether humanity sails toward conflict or toward peace. The ocean keeps its secrets, but one truth endures: the next wave, when it comes, will decide everything.